Hi everyone, this video is going to go through the process of using Recap360, the Autodesk product that creates 3D models from a series of photographs, and then creating that model, downloading an OBJ file, loading that into Rhino, just really basics about Rhino. I know we're going to cover this next year in 251, but at least for now you can get the basics of how to navigate and then how to render an image out so that you can use that. Now, you don't have to use this method if you don't want to. You can just use photographs of your model individually to do a top view, a plan. You can do photographs to do sketches from. I'm just going to show you how I set this up. So I know I've shown a few of you in class, but this is just to give you a reference to go back to. So first thing is just understanding how to take the pictures. You can see these here. You basically want to go around and every 10 to 15 degrees or so and take pictures from a slightly elevated view. And again, you can see there's one's a little out of focus. Now, we don't have trees in ours, so it doesn't matter. But if you really want to get things like these little stems, you would also have to take a lower angle view so it can tell that it's not just something that's embedded in the surface, that it's actually sticking up above the surface. And you also notice a few of these, not the best example. Over here, I'm cutting the corner off over here again. That one looks pretty good. You don't want to do that. I mean, usually it works, but you really want to make sure you zoom in as far as you can on each shot, but include the entire model as well. And you can use the little platform we have set up in the studio to do that. So again, you want to be as zoomed in as you can, but also make sure you don't crop off. It's easy as you start moving around just to not pay attention. And you can, these are in a vertical format. You can use the landscape, the horizontal format on your phone or camera, and that works pretty well too. So that's the idea. You want to get good overlapping coverage. Probably between 15 and 20 shots to go around one of these models would be good. The more you have, the more accurate it gets. So it'll probably give you a message as well if you load in images that are less than 20, but I found that still works. For these kind of models, that still actually works pretty well. Okay, so that's how you want to take the pictures. Next thing, when you go to the Autodesk sign-in, if you don't have an account, I mentioned you have to sign up for an account. You can click sign up here, and you can put your name, email address, all that stuff in here and get an account. You can also do that at the Autodesk student page, and then it will go from there. I did notice the other day, I will sign in here, that, okay, I'm going to have to go back here, refresh this page, all right, we'll just go to a new tab. When somebody was doing it in class, it was asking for credits to do the high resolution version, and I'm not getting that. And I don't know whether that's because I'm signed up as a faculty member or what. But anyway, if you want to, once you get in here, if you don't have any models, you can just click Photo to 3D. And here it says you can drag and drop. I can't get that to work. So what you really want to just do is click here, and we'll go to here, here. Let's see, project 2. Let's see, where did I put those? Here we go. So the other thing, I'll show you this. I'll bounce over into Photoshop just for a second. Here's the original photographs that I took that I was just running through. Now you can see these are 2448 by 3264, 2 megabytes apiece. These will work. You can just upload them directly, but if you want to save a little space and a little time, you can actually go through and process these. So you can see I took these down to, come on, 1224, basically took them in half. So they're only 492 kilobytes instead of over 2 megabytes apiece. And that actually is quite easy to do in Photoshop. You can just go back to Photoshop, go to File, and choose Scripts and Image Processor. So this is a batch processing. So I am going to select the images to process first. So right here, I'm going to choose Originals. That's where I'm going to pull those out of. Then I'm going to say select the location of the saved processed images. And I already have a folder in there too. I just create another one to show you through this demo. So you want to create that folder first so that you have a place to tell Photoshop, okay, open these up, process them, and save them out to this location. That's what this is for. And then here, I just looked up how big those pictures were, divided it in half, and so basically I'm resizing and saving as a JPEG. Okay, don't really need to save them as Photoshop files. You really need JPEGs to upload them. And then you just click run, and basically it goes through and it opens every single one of these pictures up and resizes it to that half size, and then saves it out with the same name with a JPEG file into that folder. So you can do this while you're doing something else. It works great. It's not required, as I mentioned. You can use full-size photos, but you really don't need the super high resolution images, and they just take up a lot more space. And you can see in this one, I actually took some photos from a lower angle, and then I took some photos from a higher angle. So there are a lot of pictures in here, which gives you a really nice coverage of the model. But we can talk about that some in class as well. Okay, so that's done processing. If I go back to my originals, jump up, now you can see that it created a JPEG folder, and there's all these images that are in there. Okay, so if you go back to Recap360. So these are my processed JPEGs. I'm at the open dialog box. I'm just going to select all those, click open, and it will drop them in there. Then you go to settings. Make sure you give it a name, demo model 2. And again, I've got this at 0 credits, so I can go to ultra. If yours says 5 credits or something in there, just use the preview mode. Seems to work just fine anyway. And I have to find out a little bit more about whether that they charge you or how that works. I don't know. I usually go to smart cropping and choose on. That means it kind of gets rid of extraneous background information around it. Leave the nadar optimization off, and we're going to use OBJ and RCM format. So as long as you have a name in here, preview, smart cropping on, then you just hit create. So it will go through and upload the pictures. Once it uploads the pictures, it's going to go through the processing. And once it's finished with the processing, then it's ready to display through the browser, which I don't really care for because their navigation interface is absolutely terrible. It's really hard to navigate through it using the wheel and the right mouse click and whatever. So I usually just download the OBJ, open that Rhino. So I'm going to, I guess I'll wait for this to finish here. Okay, go back to the dashboard. So once it's been downloaded, so here's the earlier version. What you want to do is you can click on this and look at it online, but what I want you to do is go to where the little 3 dots are and just choose downloads, and then click on OBJ, and it will save that file. In this case, I'm just saving it down, and that should do it. So now if I go back to my folder, I'm going to use a different one. Use Danny's project from class, and so it will download as this obj.zip file. So you need to right click on that, use 7-zip, and say extract here to the name of this. Will, instead of having the files just spread out in this folder, it will actually create a new folder, as you can see right up here, and the files will be inside that. So I'm not going to do that again. I already have that unzipped, but that's what you'll need to do. And inside that you'll see a mesh .mtl, mesh object, and a texture file. So you want to take this folder and put it in your project folder where you're going to be working on it, because once you open this into Rhino, it needs to know where this file is. And if you open it and then you move it somewhere else, so just it won't be able to load the texture map into it. So make sure that you keep this in the same place once you open it. And then when you save your Rhino model, you can save it right back in the same folder. So once that's done, I can go back to Rhino. I just started the Rhino 64-bit. Open with a blank document, go to File, choose Import, and let's go back to here. Okay, there's the folder there, and there's the mesh object, and just click Open. And just leave the defaults the way they are and just click OK. And you'll see it load in a second. You can click anywhere outside of that to deselect it. Now, it won't look like much, but we can go in and fix that by just taking, we've got these 4 views. The only thing I'm going to show you about Rhino is just basic navigation. So you can click in any of these windows to activate it, use the wheel to zoom in and out, use the right mouse button to rotate or orbit, and use shift right mouse button to pan. Now, if we want to see what's going on, we can click on the little pop-up menu for each window frame and choose rendered. rendered. And now we can actually see it. So here, I just zoom in and out with the wheel, right mouse pans around. I'm not orbiting in plan view, in top view. In the 3D view, I can zoom in with the wheel, mouse wheel, and then right click to move it around. I can also double click on any of these tabs. So if I want a bigger view, I can just double click on perspective, and I can kind of zoom in there and take views from different locations. And that's all you really need to know how to what to do in Rhino. So when you're going to plan, you switch back, you can double click on the top view, and you can zoom in and out on that and get that position the way you want it. Now, a couple ways to handle this in here. Basically, if you're exporting a top view, let's start with that. You can zoom in on that, and we can go to render. Now, the first thing you want to do, this is how you export an image file that then you can print out and use, or you can bring it into Photoshop and draw over it there. So first thing you want to do is set the render properties, because by default it gives you kind of a low resolution version. And actually, the other thing we might want to do first, before we even do that, is scale this up. And there's just a scale command, so you can just type scale. Select the object to scale, and then hit enter or right click, and then you choose origin point. Now I'm going to pick this corner right here, and I have to turn my ortho off and grid snap off. So I'm just going to draw along this edge, and if I know what this is, I think I measured in somebody's, it's like 260 feet. So I'm just going to click there, type in 260 with a foot mark, and hit enter. So it just scaled this up to real world dimensions. So now this is actually 260 feet wide. What that does is it makes it a bigger model. So when we export the image, it's a larger size, and it will be easier to scale into our Photoshop document, which I'll demo a little bit later. Okay, so now I've got this set up. I can go to render, render properties. And under Rhino render, you see right here the resolution is 640 by 480. I want to set that up to full HD, 1920 by 1080, and set the DPI up to 150. You might even take, if you end up getting an image that's too small or a little small, you could set this up to 300. That way you can double the size of it in Photoshop without losing any resolution if you set it back to 150. And that's, I think, all we have to do. And now we just go to render menu and choose render. And it will pull up a separate window and go through the sequence of rendering. It looks like it's not doing anything for a second, but it's called ray tracing, and it's actually going through and processing. And it will give you a much sharper version of what you see on the screen. So it's got several threads going here. You'll see little ribbons appearing as it goes through the process. It's just about done. So just let it keep running, keep expanding. Don't click on anything or interrupt it. Just let it finish up. Okay. Once it's done, you can come over here and just click Save Image As and model rendering. Top view render, we'll just put it in there. And then you can just close this window down. So it's a separate special window for doing renderings. Okay, so that's all there is to being able to manipulate this in Rhino. Now, if you wanted to do some perspective views for your presentation board, you can do the same thing. Just kind of zoom in, get the view that you want, and actually just right-clicked on it, but you can go up and choose render, and it will go through and render that view as well. All right, I'm not going to wait for this one to get done. Close this out here. Okay, so once you've got that from Rhino, and you can save this out as a Rhino model so you can open it up and look at it later on. That's the file that I brought into Photoshop. And so you can see here, this is the original rendering. I've got it down on the bottom layer here. And I actually lightened a version of it up so I could trace over it. And I've got this kind of, I cut the piece out below here so you could see it. But basically, I just want to show you that all I've really done is take this and used a number 2 pencil to do some shading. Looking at the lighting, because shading here, light, little shaded there, and just try and give it that bright side, dark side. And what we're going to do with this is once this entire thing is rendered, let's see, contours. Okay, we're going to take it and open the PDF into Photoshop, and then I place this rendered image. Now you see it's only half a rendered image. I want to show the difference between kind of before and after, but I placed this in the PDF in Photoshop and rotated it and scaled it so it fit in where it's supposed to fit. You know, this is a rough model, so it doesn't fit perfectly, but you get the idea. And then once that's in there, then I know that's exactly at 20 scale, and that's something that we're gonna make sure that we have it set to the right scale. And in another demo, I don't have this set up right now. I'm not going to take the time to measure it, but you can actually, if you measure the width of your screen, you can go in the preferences and use that to calculate the number of pixels by the dimension in inches, get pixels per inch, and put that in, and then you can actually have the screen display at 100% or print resolution, which means you could stick a scale on there and measure it. And I'll show you how to do that in another demo. Okay, so that's what this is. Just use basic shading techniques. Now you could, if anyone's interested, this is a slightly different technique. I actually ran the contour command in Rhino and it generates contours, and then I turn this on. You can see that I just use those contours as a way to do directional hatching. So each one represents kind of a step up in elevation, just like some of you are building models that way, kind of creating layers and stepping them up. You know, it's a different way to render it. How you do it is up to you. I'm not saying it has to be done exactly like this or the other way. You could use stippling, you could use smooth shading, but you know, use some method to try and give an indication of the relative elevation changes and relief. And you can see where the walkways or flat areas, I just used the stippling, so you could use different textures in there as well. And then what I also did, just as an example of some of the sketches, is, you know, here's an image that I pulled off of that same model, just looking at a certain direction and illustrating. In this case, I just chose deflected vista, and just did some diagramming in there, threw some silhouette figures in there. The sky actually is pretty easy. I don't know if I showed you that before or not, but let's just make a new layer. The sky is another one of those rendering options, so we can come in here with the magic wand, so you sample all layers, select that sky area, have a blank layer, just go to filter, render, clouds. Now before I do that, I'm going to take this and make a little lighter blue, because it's using the foreground and the background colors to mix for the clouds. So I'm going to choose render, clouds, and it just puts a cloud and sky. There really aren't any settings, it just kind of randomly creates that, but it creates a nice way just to create a little background in there. So anyway, then I had another one that, well, I don't have it set up here, but I had another one which I'll show you in the InDesign example of use the same image it did here and there. Let's switch over to InDesign. You can see the example of that one. So there's the deflected vista. Here's here and there. All I did was I used the text tool, type some big text in here, and then use the raster text layer command to rasterize it. And then once it's rasterized, I use the transform, distort, and warp functions to just kind of bend it around here and create that kind of look to it. So again, not saying it has to be done this way, but just as an example of how you can take what you learn from project one and apply it to this one. So in this case, here's the board, 24 by 36. You could arrange the plan here. Again, I don't have it labeled, but you'd label the plan, put the scale. And what I was thinking in this, again, you can decide how you want to approach this board. I have a smaller version over here with numbers on it, which could represent with notes, say, next to it that say, okay, area 1 is this, area 2 is this, area 3. You could have a little explanation about the individual parts of your design, why you did it that way, what they represent. Maybe on this plan, I might put view arrows that indicate these different views. So you could have view 1, view 2, view 3, and then you could have this labeled view 1, deflected vista, and an explanation of that, why it's there, how it works. This little area over here, you could have your statement of design intent, and I know a lot of you have kind of process sketches, things you work through. You could have little illustrations that help show how you developed your idea, how it evolved from one stage to the next. Again, whatever you need to help explain what your concept is, what the design intent is, and how you arrived at that idea and developed that idea. So again, the exact, and then up here I probably have some space for the title of the project, your name, the course, all that information. But again, you can use the grid, set up a grid, get things lined up on it. It's 24 by 36. There's plenty of room to get all the information on there that you need to. You're to have at least 4 to 6 of these illustrations. One of those could be another plan. For example, you could add that to this that actually shows the organizational structure that you use to organize your design. There's kind of a radial organization starting to come out of here. You could, instead of drawing over your rendered plan, you could do that on a separate diagrammatic plan, and that could count as one of those 4 to 8 illustrations. Again, the more you can do, the better you'll be able to explain your design. And essentially this board is really what you're going to use for your presentation, because if you design this board right, and we'll talk about that next week, might have you use Prezi, you could take screen snapshots, put it into PowerPoint. We'll talk about how we're going to do that, but this board tells the story of your design, how you came up with the idea, what the concept is, how you created it, and what the particulars are in relationship to the different landforms that you have as part of the design. Okay, so hopefully that'll give you a little idea. I'll go over this in class today, but I wanted to have this up there as a tutorial and to at least get you started, to give you something to have a reference back to.